So Sonic Adventure 2, I finally got around to playing this for the first time, and I had really high hopes for it after enjoying Sonic Adventure 1. But does this game push the newly founded 3D Sonic era to new heights, or is this game more of a case of one step forward, two steps back? Let's have a look. Releasing in 2001, Sonic Adventure 2 sets to carry on the story seen in the first game. However, through its ambition, it aims to take it up a gear. Now, after Sonic Adventure, the Sonic team was downsized and a portion of the staff were moved to San Francisco to establish Sonic Team USA. Sonic Adventure 2 had a significantly smaller development team than the first game, and as such, Sonic Adventure 2 had a much more streamlined design. And oh boy, was this felt in my play. So this game splits the story into two main story arcs, with a third at the end once you've finished everything. This is a pretty big departure from the first game that splits the story up into 6 different characters. SA2 has a hero story where you control Knuckles, Sonic, and Tails with some cutscene appearances from Amy. And then you have the Dark storyline where you'll control Shadow, Rouge the Bat, and Eggman. Now in that hero storyline, Sonic is wrongly accused of doing some pretty heinous shit. People see a hedgehog looking figure and automatically assume it's Sonic. But we quickly get our introduction to who it really was. And unbeknownst to the player at the time, we would also be introduced to the coolest character ever created across any franchise. He introduces himself as Shadow, the ultimate life form.
Be using the Chaos Emerald to warp.
Shadow. I'm the world's ultimate life form. There's no time for games. Farewell.
Meanwhile, Eggman has been on that grind for real since Adventure 1, and he's leveled up his swag. Instead of these silly little gadgets that he had in 1, now he has enough power to, I don't know, blow up half the moon if you wanted to. And that's exactly what he does, because he's a fucking madman. Eggman threatens to destroy the world and it's up to Sonic and his friends to stop him. Now the Dark storyline is basically the same thing but in reverse, and instead of trying to stop Eggman, you're actually playing to help Eggman achieve his goal by controlling Shadow, Rouge the Bat, and Eggman himself. We also find out that Eggman learned of a secret weapon from his grandfather, Gerald Robotnik, who we later found out to be Shadow the Hedgehog, touted as being the ultimate life form.
Let's take a look at what my grandfather was working on. A top secret military weapon. The military shut down the research because they feared it.
Now it's thought that Shadow would bring ultimate destruction to the world once he was released upon it, being that secret weapon. However, by the end of the story and getting into that third arc, you see that Shadow recalls more from his foggy past and has a change of heart. His only friend and cousin to Eggman, Maria, requested that Shadow help mankind and gives them a chance to be happy. And I really liked how Shadow was given quite a complex story arc here, and some very prominent seeds were sown that I could only assume will flourish in later games. Seeing him go from willingly assisting in the world's destruction to using Maria as a moral compass to ultimately save everyone was a fantastic story arc.
I beg of you,
Maria.
give them a chance to be happy.
Now it's also implied that Shadow may have died in this moment, so going from wanting the world's destruction over to a noble sacrifice to save humanity is crazy character development. Now in that final third arc in the game, you do get some additional info about Eggman's grandfather, as well as his experiments of him trying to create the ultimate life form. But it's really jammed in at the end of the game. And given how interesting those parts of the story were, I found it to be such a shame that it wasn't given the time that it needed to be really fleshed out. I wanted to see what he was working on, more of his experiments, but a lot of that story is told through flashbacks with Shadow or old recordings. It just felt like a bit of a missed opportunity. You later find out that Eggman's grandfather went insane after his granddaughter and Shadow's only friend Maria was killed. Gerald wanted to fucking curse all of humanity as an act of retribution and retaliation. That's why he built a machine that could literally destroy the planet by sending Ark plummeting to Earth if the Chaos Emeralds were put into this machine.
I plan to give you a taste of my revenge once all the 7 Chaos Emeralds are collected. Once I initiate this program, it cannot be disabled. All of you ungrateful humans who took everything away from me will feel my loss and despair.
That is such a badass story, and I really wish the game focused a lot more on that aspect rather than jamming all of those reveals at the very end. Outside of the pacing issues, I found this game to have many other questionable decisions that led to many more issues throughout my play, so let's get into those. So like the previous game, you will control 6 characters. However, unlike the previous game, you will not get a choice in the order in which you play them, and on top of that, the functionality of those 6 characters are also drastically reduced. See, in Sonic Adventure 1, all 6 characters had their own unique and different playstyles. Having the ability to choose any character at any time allowed you to not only be in control of what you wanted to do, but also afforded you that character's perspective. Sonic Adventure 2 changed all of that. Your gameplay is now split into 3 different settings against those 6 characters. Sonic and Shadow focus on speed. Rouge the Bat and Knuckles focus on that hot and cold exploration mechanic found in the first game. And then Tails and Eggman are both in these mech walking robot suits that shoot. Now at first I quite liked this change, as it meant the storytelling could be a lot more streamlined. The game could have a much more refined focus and linear emphasis, which means the developer could focus on telling one really good story for the hero side and one really good story for the dark side, rather than trying to segment 6 individual stories that somehow fit into an overarching story like how it was in the first game. But doing it this way also removed your ability to choose your character and in turn what you wanted to do in the game. In Sonic Adventure 2, you only get to choose what side of the story you want to play. And once you choose that story, you are at the game's mercy as to who you play as next. It meant that there were so many times where I just wanted to run fast through levels, but I was stuck doing yet another search mission or a shooting mission. Now, unlike the first game, characters now have a fairly even amount of levels or playtime each, which means that Sonic did not really feel like the focus or a star in his own franchise anymore. 2/3 of the missions, or 4 out of the 6 playable characters, were around slow combat with guns or slow exploration that entirely slowed down any momentum being built in the story. Shit's going down, moons are being blown up, Chaos Emeralds are being collected, but wait! You need to find 3 shards. Nothing spells urgency like gliding around looking for a shard.
I found him!
Now that leaves 1/3 of the game, or 2 out of the 6 playable characters that focus on the idea of what this franchise is based on, which is going fast. The Shadow and Sonic levels were an absolute highlight in this game, and by the end of it, I found myself just groaning and moaning every single time I got to another exploration or shooting level. I just wanted to play as Sonic and Shadow because those levels were the most fun, and I found that the speed levels far exceeded anything done in the first Sonic Adventure game by a mile, especially this jungle level. However, without the ability to choose a character, and with over 60% of the game not being Sonic or Shadow, it severely brought down my enjoyment. I was always met with this feeling that I was being forcibly pulled away from what I considered to be the most fun aspect of the game. Now, I also really did miss the concept that every character had their own unique style, and it was something that I looked forward to when you play as a new character. I missed Amy and jumping around with a hammer, and she even acknowledges that she isn't even included in this game.
I hate you! You guys always leave me behind and have all the fun!
And there also isn't a hub world in this game either. As unclear as that hub world was sometimes in the first Sonic Adventure game, I really didn't like the feature of just being stuck in a story and being forced to do nothing else other than just the story here. I missed running around, I missed exploring new areas and taking advantage of the many characteristics of each playable character to reach new heights or obtain new items. That was one of the many joys from SA1, however, one that was very sorely missed here. Now, I also loathe the decision of changing Tails' gameplay from his typical running and flying to him spending most of his time in his Cyclone Walker mech suit. We already had a walking shooter in the last game with E102 Gamma, and then we have Eggman in this one. There was no discernible reason to change Tails from his free-flying form into a slow, restricted mech suit other than to have him be a reskin of Eggman to save time on level design and overall development. It barely makes sense in the context of what's going on in the story, and I get using a suit for 1 to 2 missions, but not all of them. Now, in terms of level design, this game is by far more ambitious compared to its predecessor, with the levels playing around with new locations, varying paths to take, new enemies, and even new mechanics. However, the implementation varies in its level of success. There are many moments in this game where something will come up and it will be a neat idea on paper, but it completely falls apart in its execution. I love that the team, reduced as they were, still tried to give us something new in the sequel, but it quickly exposes a lot of the issues in transitioning Sonic from a 2D to a 3D setting. Given that SA1 was fairly simplistic in its level design, there really wasn't a chance for many of the issues to surface. SA2's attempt of complexity unfortunately highlights a lot of the issues under the hood. There are some gravity sections that have your character be an absolute nightmare to control. You instinctively press down or maybe a little bit to the left, but given the angle, you actually have to push it down and to the right, otherwise you fall off the platform. There are also some of these gravity pillars that you just fall to your death if you jump off at the wrong direction. Shifts in gravity highlighted how clunky these characters are. I feel like mechanics like these should not have been implemented into SA2 with its current development time. They are an incredibly creative idea and again, sounds awesome on paper to give these levels a nice touch of diversity and adaptability. However, in its current state, they should have either been finessed and fleshed out a bit more or entirely removed. They were never a fun time for me, and again, it slowed down that momentum. Now moving into the boss fights, unfortunately just another downgrade in my opinion. While some were fun, and I can appreciate the push to make them more unique than the first game, most just became frustrating. I quite liked the Egg Golem fight, but there were other bosses that really made me question if what I was doing was right or if my game had just bugged out. The battle with Rouge had her spamming this dark energy attack and I could not do anything other than to float out of the way.
Quick wave. Here I come, get ready, 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 quick wave.
I was seriously considering restarting my game given how many attacks she dished out in such quick succession. This sequence here of me chasing a giant ghost round was sensible at first until you get to the last hit and you have to run side to side so many times in order for the item to drop so you can eventually attack the ghost. Now normally you just do it 1, 2, maybe 3 times and then you get the item and then you hit the ghost. On the last hit, after like 6 or 7 times of running, I still couldn't get the item and I was seriously questioning if my game had actually bugged out because I couldn't do anything else. I did a few more runs and it finally worked. It's things like this that show the boss fights were great on paper but really needed more time to refine and perfect them. And the end product that we got feels lacking in its execution. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, for some reason there's a huge difficulty spike in the final story that left me with a sour taste as I came to the conclusion of this game. You get a really crappy Tails sequence, and then you get a really crappy Eggman sequence, and they control like absolute ass already, but then you throw in enemies that have quick and long ranged attacks that you can't dodge, so you just end up being killed. Mixed in with the fact that at a distance they just turn into a ball of water and deflect your attacks, so it was almost fucking impossible. And I know I'm not alone in this either because I thought I was going crazy and I found a Reddit thread where people were saying that this end of the game was hard, some even saying that it was just complete dog shit. Now once you do get through all of that shit, you fight a prototype of the ultimate life form, and then both Sonic and Shadow have to turn into Super Sonic and Super Shadow to stop the Ark from plummeting to Earth. Now if I'm being honest, this moment right here, where my boys turned into Super Shadow and Super Sonic, should have made me shit my pants on sight. It really should have. But the cheap ass moments before with the shitty Tails, the Eggman, the Knuckles, the Rouge, it's just soured everything, where even something as cool as this couldn't redeem the game for me. In terms of side content, there is a lot more to do here with a much more detailed Chao Garden with many more things to do this time around. However, like SA1, I didn't really pay too much attention to this. There's also a few other game modes that are given to you as you make your way through the game, which is really nice for replayability. However, unfortunately, some of these just feel a little tacked on rather than being fully fledged ideas, so it can come across as a bit of an afterthought. So look, I did like this game, I truly did. I know I had a lot of criticisms, however, I wanted this game to be an improvement over the first. I really love what was achieved in that first game and only wanted this game to continue to elevate that series. I really loved the story and the emotional complexity of Shadow, as well as expanding the roster of characters with Shadow, Rouge, Maria, and Gerald. I love the aspect of his research and felt that that story in SA2 exceeded the one seen in Sonic Adventure 1. Its high points far exceeded the highs of SA1, however those points were rare and short-lived. In that same vein, Sonic Adventure 2's low points fell far below the lows of SA1, to the point where I began to miss playing the first game. Through its ambition, it highlighted many faults of a 3D Sonic game. It demonstrated that more complex levels and features really do require a higher level of dedication and finesse to give the player a more enjoyable gaming experience. I can only hope that the team learned from this and ironed out the issues for future Sonic games to come.